What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated Podcast, episode 168 on this Monday, April 21st, 2025. Josh Callaway, James E. Jackson, Tom Green with you on a Monday. Wild weekend for OU fans that end up getting back to a good place. We will recap all the David Stone saga, what happened, what it means that OU kept them, all of that. We'll get into everything that happened over the last few days. Also some transfer portal updates, a couple of visits of interest that are starting today in Norman that we will kind of talk about a little bit of the latest there and what the fits would mean if OU could land a couple of these guys. And of course, as always, we'll recap the weekends that were for the Diamond Sports as well. Both teams picking up sweeps over the weekend, kind of getting to the home stretch of those two seasons, baseball and softball. So we'll talk about that a little later on in the show. But guys, we have to start with the David Stone saga that was over the weekend. We always were going to talk about this on Monday, but the tenor of the conversation changed a lot in the last couple of days. Friday, David Stone hops in the transfer portal. Obviously, a former five-star, took a whole lot of effort to get him. It was a big deal when they got him. Showed some flashes in his true freshman season, but, was mostly a reserve, just kind of played here and there. Hit the portal on Friday, and then after a couple of days of renegotiations, ends up pulling his name back out of the portal. He's staying at Oklahoma. Pull it apart however you'd like, but just the reaction to kind of all of it. The fact that David was in the portal, there's obviously a lot of belief that there was a lot of, NIL was a big part of this, that Oklahoma wanted to restructure his deal. They ended up coming to a resolution. What is the headline for you guys coming out of all of this? Is they found a way to keep David Stone after it looked like they wouldn't for, about 24, 48 hours there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a shocking development Friday night. I don't know what you guys were up to. I was getting ready to go to a friend's birthday party. And then it happened, and, I had to get something up real quick before I left the house. But I don't think anybody really saw this coming. Like you said, he didn't play like an overwhelming amount as a true freshman, just 94 snaps, but he was still, number 5 in the rotation at defensive tackle behind, Grayson Halton, Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, and DeJoun Terry. DeJoun Terry obviously graduates. Mm-hmm. That leaves an opening for David Stone to have an outsized role in that rotation, be firmly in the 2 deep, right? And all indications are that he had a really good spring. We talked to him earlier this month, and he spoke pretty openly about just some of the mental struggles of, having to adjust to the college game and, understanding how to compartmentalize parts of his life and being able to focus on football when he needs to focus on football. And he gave a lot of credit to Todd Bates and the relationship that they have for, kind of helping him get over that mental hump. And, he seemed to be, on the upward trajectory this spring.
Yeah.
So when he jumped in the portal, it was really surprising to me. Yeah, mm-hmm. It was stunning. Like you said, they worked diligently throughout the weekend to try to talk him back into the picture, and both sides came to a resolution. And obviously, like you said, NIL certainly played a role in it. We saw Jim Nagy post a sunglasses emoji afterwards. So clearly, as a GM, he had some role in those negotiations. Todd Bates certainly had a very important role in their relationship and getting him to stay in there. But, at the end of the day, like being able to retain a talent like David Stone, a homegrown talent, a guy from, Oklahoma City area, to keep him a former 5-star top 10 player. When he hopped in the portal, he was the, number 1 defensive tackle on the market this whole offseason, number 10 overall player in the portal when you include the winter transfer window too. So to be able to retain him is huge, especially as you look at that defensive tackle rotation and how good it can be for Oklahoma given what they return.
Mm-hmm. So early that week on Tuesday, David Stone tweeted out a picture of the commitment ceremony. Basically, when he was at the game at that halftime where he committed to OU, and it had the hats, Michigan State, Miami, and OU. And for some reason, I just thought, what in the world? Like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what this guy's got going on here, because you always think that he's, the Sooner born, Sooner bred type of guy, a guy that's never going to change his mind about being at OU. So I just kind of wrote it off. That's pretty much what happened. And then, Friday, as you all were, I was shocked when I saw it. I spoke to his little league coach. trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Did you know this was coming? He's like, no, I had no idea. So like, it was a shock to a lot of people. And I'm not entirely sure how it works out with what he's, responsible for with his family and how his NIL situation is. I don't want to get into that. I'm not sure, but maybe that's what it was. Something like that happened. And it sounds like the renegotiation is what brought him back. And it's a talent that OU absolutely wants in Norman. It seems like David Stone wants to be in Norman. So it's like, it had to come down to that. It was just a money issue, I think, at the time. And I think it's all resolved now. And it's really good. Now, I know a lot of people want to, speak on his stats and what he did last year. And maybe that's why the renegotiations were happening, but he was a guy that was, getting used to college and he was playing through injury a lot of the year as well. So like now having that maturity of what he's learned and what he told us that, Tom kind of alluded to him trying to compartmentalize, all those different things about his life. It just seems like he's going to have such a better year. And you would hate to develop a guy for him then to go to a different program and shine based off what you were able to develop him with. You know what I mean? So like, it was a really, really good get for OU to bring him back because he was such an important piece for that cycle. I mean, we spoke about it a lot going into it. Brent Venables needed to land this guy in that class because like you said, he's from Dale City, Oklahoma. He's a guy from here. And he's a 5-star from here. He's a guy that you absolutely need. So it's a saga, as you say. It's a saga, but you get him back and it works out. I mean, so it's been a wild week. I feel like in total.
No doubt. I just can't help but feel like this goes differently if they don't have Jim Nagy and a more organized structure.
That's fair.
The obvious comparison is Caden Green, 2 years ago, where a player hits the portal out of nowhere. We all were not ready for it. Whoa. And it was a money thing, and he ends up going to Missouri. And, this time it just felt like Oklahoma was more prepared to handle crisis. And they figured it out, in 48 hours. They figured it out. They made it work. It's not a guy you want to lose. And look, I was prepared whenever this happened on Friday and, Saturday, wherever. I'm thinking of the show on Monday. I was prepared. You were not going to see me sit here and write this off as no big deal. It was a huge deal to lose David. And James, to your point, people bring up the production last year. That's ridiculous to me. He was a true freshman. I get that Jaden Jackson had a great year. I think that's part of it is, Jaden Jackson is better, whatever, we're fine. As Brent Venables said himself, doing what Jaden Jackson did last year is abnormal. That's not the norm to go into the SEC as a defensive tackle and be an impact player the way he was. I still fully expect David Stone to be a big-time player in the SEC in due time, maybe this year. He looks great in spring, had a great camp, kind of like Tom was talking about. So it would have been bad. It's not a guy you want to lose. An in-state guy, would not have been a good thing for Oklahoma at all, in my opinion. I was not going to write it off as no big deal. Is it earth-shattering? Season's over? No, but it would have been damaging. So to figure it out, make it work, get him back. And David loves Todd Bates. He loves OU. This is his state. He probably doesn't want to, didn't want to leave either. I don't want to speak for him, but he felt like probably I got to at least, see what else is out there for me if this is the way it's going. And I'm just glad for both parties that, they figured it out. Cooler heads kind of prevailed here. It seems like this breakup should not have happened, and it didn't. So good for everyone that they figured it out at the end.
And the crazy.
I was going to say, you mentioned the Caden Green thing a couple of years ago, and that's an easy
sure. So everyone thinks of
similar situation. And I know throughout the weekend, a lot of people were kind of comparing it to what was going on with Tennessee and Nico Iamaleava. I don't think the situations are really comparable. It's by all indications, Nico was, trying to up his NIL significantly. And it seems like even though NIL was a factor in this, it wasn't like he was going to them being like, hey, I need $3 million, or else I'm going somewhere else. I think the circumstances were a little bit different, but you can just see how differently these situations can play out when things like this are involved. It's tough. And look, I'm not envious of a lot of these kids. I don't get me wrong. Certainly I would love to be making that kind of, money for my name, image, and likeness to be playing football at that level. But when you're 18, 19 years old, and you're given life-changing money, and a lot of times you're having to help provide for your family when you're, a year out of high school, not even. It's a difficult situation. I don't envy that at all. So again, like you said, kudos to kind of everybody, cooler heads prevailing and then being able to come to a resolution that, seems to satisfy all parties involved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was going to say, I mean, do they even get Jaden Jackson if David Stone, doesn't commit to OU the first time? Like that plays a part in it. It definitely plays a part. And so it's why it's such a big deal to have him on, because he means that much to the program and maybe some of the other guys. So,
and Jaden Jackson, he tweeted the heartbroken emojis. I mean, who knows? That's his guy. And we talked about at the time. David Stone and Michael Patterson-McDonald were really close. James obviously knows about that, and he's no longer here. He poured it out. Those relationships all kind of matter. So it just good deal for Oklahoma. I know at the end of the day, you're back to where you were. It's like it didn't happen. But it's a win. It's another win of the offseason for Jim Nagy, because this could have been very bad. It could have been a bad thing, and it ended up not being. It ended up being almost a positive in a way. Again, even though you're in the same spot you were a week ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was going to say, like, it kind of goes back to December and January when we were talking about keeping a guy like R. Mason Thomas, keeping a guy like Dominic Williams. Like, retention is being able to retain talent is oftentimes just as big of a win as being able to bring in new talent, especially when it's a player of that caliber. But
yeah, no doubt. So big win there. Defensive line. It looks like it's going to be one of the best Oklahoma's had in quite a while on paper. It still would have been really strong without David, but it looks a whole lot better with him. Yep. And a big win for Oklahoma just to keep David Stone around. And we look forward to fall. And because, few people stand out on the practice field as much as David Stone. The guy is a behemoth. So excited to see him in year 2. And I think he's ready to make that jump. And again, just to rearticulate again, I just couldn't believe how much I was seeing people bringing up his numbers. True freshman. Give him a little time. My goodness.
Yeah. All right. And he played through injury. He played all games. So it's just like,
he appeared. He was a rotational player as a true freshman. Yeah. That's in itself not even a given. So good deal for all around. And Oklahoma, a win at the end of the day that they keep David Stone around at least for another year. So much effort and resources into getting him. You don't want to lose him after 1 year. All right, shifting over to some portal updates. So kind of on that note, for about 24, 48 hours, it felt like, okay, Oklahoma really needs a defensive tackle in the portal now, probably multiple. They end up getting David Stone back, so you can ease off on that a little bit, but they still want a defensive tackle. This is something we talked about back in the winter. Colin and I discussed a few guys that they kind of, semi-courted back in that portal cycle. Obviously didn't land anyone, didn't add anyone, but they're back at it again. They have a visit coming in today. Utah State defensive tackle, defensive lineman, Siolaa, Lolohea. I hope I didn't just destroy that name. I think I got the last
name. That sounded good.
The first name I just took a shot. He comes in, this is a younger guy. He was a 3-star recruit just a couple of years ago. Let's see, last year, 8 games he appeared in as a redshirt freshman. For Utah State. He was actually at Oklahoma State before that, so he's familiar with the state, if that has any factor at all. It feels like, guys, again, the defensive tackle room is in great shape, but it would be nice to add another body here. Well, what's kind of your thoughts on this? He's coming into town. What would it mean if Oklahoma could do it? What's kind of the angle that you're kind of taking on when you look at this visit coming in today?
Yeah, you mentioned he's familiar with the state, obviously, or having been at Oklahoma State, but I think more importantly, he's familiar with Nate Dreiling. Nate Dreiling was at Utah State last year. So he played for him. Nate Dreiling's the guy who obviously, knows him well, can vouch for his character, can vouch for, his talent. And if he thinks that, he's a guy who can help them as a, depth piece, a rotational piece in that defensive tackle room, I think that carries a lot of weight. We'll see, kind of how his visit goes and, how they feel he fits in. But, I think that they would feel better about bringing in a defensive tackle in this transfer portal cycle. Like you mentioned, obviously that was something they were looking into in the winter cycle. The need is lessened by your ability to retain David Stone, but still, like you bring back your top 3 defensive tackles from the rotation last year in Dominic Williams, Grayson Halton, and Jaden Jackson. You expect David Stone to step into that number 4 spot there, and then after that, you don't really have much, experience. You got a guy that's been around for a couple seasons already, Marcus Strong. He got a lot of second-team reps this spring, especially with Jaden Jackson sidelined with that labrum injury. And then after that, it's basically Trent Wilson and a couple of walk-ons, Jacob Henry and Ace Hodges. Like you would like to have a little bit more depth in that room just in case injuries happen, because again, that is one of the positions where you're grappling there in the trenches with 300-pounders every single snap. Like, injuries are going to happen. Guys are going to get hurt in that situation. So you'd feel better about having depth and a guy that is familiar with someone on your staff, is familiar with the state. I think it could be a good fit. We'll see how it goes out, but certainly they'd like to add, another piece to kind of complement the rest of that room.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what I was going to add. I mean, he went to Oklahoma State, so he knows, about Oklahoma. He knows Nate Dreiling, so he has a familiarity. And he also, he's over 300 pounds already, which is exactly what you want in an SEC defensive tackle. So it's all the pairings of a guy that Oklahoma would absolutely want to have. So I think that's where it's at right now. And I think his skill set, fits exactly what they need, as you said, like a rotational type of guy in this unit, because this is going to be the strongest, most likely the strongest unit on this defense. Like, the defensive line as a whole is going to be really, really good. And I think it's going to start with a lot of disruption from them for how they are able to handle this crazy schedule they're going to have against these top offenses they're going to face. So a guy like him will be perfect. And I think that's exactly what OU is seeing. And I think maybe that's something he sees, because I think OU is the only one to offer him as of right now that he's in the portal. I think that's what I saw. And so that's a really good sign for them that he's a guy there that they can get.
Yeah, checks a lot of boxes. Size, he's young, he's got multiple years of eligibility, the Nate Dreiling connection that Tom talked about. There's a reason that he hopped in the portal on Friday and he had an OU offer on Saturday. I think it just makes a lot of sense, I think, for both parties. But obviously, if Oklahoma could bring him in, this is one that it feels like really a perfect fit. He's a Texas kid. Like, it just kind of works from all angles, really. So we'll see how the visit goes this week, and we'll see, what other schools get in the mix, if any. Obviously, anytime you're in this spot, especially in portal, it's more realistic. High school recruiting, not as much. But in portal, when a guy comes in and is visiting in your town, you try to just not let him leave. And that's what Oklahoma will obviously be trying to do here, and see if they can lock this down in the next day or two, because it just feels like a perfect fit, really, in a lot of ways. So we'll see how it shakes out. Colin will have updates, I'm sure. He's been dominating portal coverage. He was all over the David Stone stuff, by the way. So great time to subscribe to Sooners Illustrated, because we've got lots of great portal coverage there, and more to come for sure. Tom, do you have something you want to add?
I was going to say, to your point about, like, when you get a guy on campus, you try to close the deal, because you look back even last week, Oklahoma had Mason Shipley in, the Texas State kicker. Yeah. He leaves next day, signed with Texas. Like, you can't leave a window open. If you want a guy, you need to get the deal done.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Especially, like I said, in portal. In high school, it's like guys are going to take their visits they want. But in the portal, it's more like, if I like it, boom. They're more likely to just kind of.
Especially when it's such a condensed, at this point, right? Exactly. It's a 10-day window. Yeah. Guys can still visit after that 10-day window, but you have 10 days to hop in the portal, and after that, it's just a mad dash. Like, we've talked to coaches and just like how crazy it is. It's like, sometimes you don't even get to see these kids face to face before they're committing, and it's just you're doing your due diligence. You're talking to people in their circles. You're having a Zoom call, but if you can get them on campus, you need to close the deal if you feel good about them.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt. From a position of, kind of luxury, you'd like to add, not dire, to one that you probably do really need to add in tight end. Our own Chris Hummer was the first report last week that Lance Mason, Missouri State tight end, is going to be visiting starting today as well. This is a guy that is coveted. One of the, more highly thought of tight ends in the portal, which seems to be a really tough position to find in the transfer portal, really productive ones. And Lance Mason was pretty productive last year at Missouri State, 34 catches, 590 yards, 6 touchdowns, good size at 6'4". We've talked about the tight end room at length. A couple of guys had nice camps. Will Huggins, in particular, Carson Kent did some nice things too, but you have little to no proven production at the Power 5 level, and Lance Mason wouldn't certainly be that either, but it gives you another body, the more guys you get, the more chance you have on hitting on one, and Lance Mason comes into town. Again, this is a guy that, is coveted by multiple programs. He's got multiple visits lined up, but he's in town today. Guys, this seems like another good fit. And Colin, we talked on Thursday about Gavin Hoffman, the Iowa tight end. He has since committed to Missouri. So another guy that they were kind of chasing is off the board. Feels like all their eggs are in this basket, at least for now. Big visit here with Lance Mason trying to add to that tight end room.
Yeah, and you mentioned his stats, but he's also an FCS All-American. He had the highest pass catching grade in the FCS last season. So he's a guy that's proven it, albeit at a lower level. We've seen them go to the FCS well before. Obviously, last year they brought in Bauer Sharp. He was, for all his troubles. I don't want to say troubles. His struggles at times, errors, gaffes, whatever. He was still the team's leading receiver, and I know that is probably more of an indictment of the offense overall than it is a compliment to Bauer Sharp. But he was still a good pass catcher when you asked him to do that. But being able to maybe bring in an FCS All-American who's got a little bit more experience and a little bit more adept at that, I think that would be good, especially because, we've talked about it. Like, you look at what they lost last year. They lost about 90% of their production in that tight end room. They don't really bring back much experience. Like, their most experienced player in that room has been playing linebacker for the last 3 years. Everybody else has either been, Caden Helms, Cade McIntyre, haven't really been able to stay healthy during their career, so they haven't had a chance to prove much. Will Huggins has experience at the FBS level in a Power 4 conference, at Kansas, but he had one catch in 3 years at Kansas, and that was against Oklahoma for a touchdown before going down to Pitt State, which is a D2 school. And look, all indications are he had a really good spring. Stood out. Carson Kent is another guy that's just been a reliable pass catcher in the offense during the spring. But I think if you have a chance to go out there and get someone with a little bit more proven of a resume, so to speak, again, it goes back to what Jim Nagy was saying. Like, if you're not just looking for depth pieces in the portal, if they feel that they can upgrade a position, they're going to be aggressive and try to get that done. So we'll see what happens. Like you said, tight ends are at a premium in the portal. Very few of them, and they go quickly if they're worth it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest point from what Nagy said. I mean, OU has a lot of tight ends in the room, if we discussed, even with Devon Mitchell, parting ways. Sure. So this guy must be a guy that they're seeing, and it's like he's the one that we need to really fulfill this offense from what we've built already. And so it's going to be really exciting to see what they do with Lance Mason. As you said, on paper he looks really, really good, and looks like he could fit the mold really well with his size and his abilities from what he put on tape. It's a pretty special situation. So that's where I see it right now.
No doubt. It'd be a good addition. Kind of feels like one just kind of make sense all around. They need more bodies in there just to like I said, the more you have a chance of hitting on one. And we'll kind of see. Mason is expected to visit Wisconsin next, I believe, starting tomorrow. They obviously just had their tight end hop in the portal as well. I think Cal was also in the mix.
Yeah, Purdue
tight end hop in the portal. Yeah. So, it's kind of a tight end market. If that, like, it's good for tight ends. Like, they're coveted right now. There's not that many out there that have proven some production. So, it's going to be a little bit of a battle. Oklahoma's going to have to make some things happen to get them, but feels like they know they need to add a tight end. And so we'll see what they can do today. Visits ongoing as we speak. And again, we'll have more portal updates over on the website, Oklahoma247sports.com, as they come. Yeah. And we'll certainly check in with Colin on the Thursday show as well with the latest here if we don't have a resolution on Mason.
Yeah, I was going to say, if they get either of these guys, and obviously we know they're still trying to, they'd still like to add a kicker to that room, they're going to need more attrition. I believe they're currently projected at 105 players, which is the limit. But if you're going to add more, you're going to have to get a few more guys to hop in the portal too. So we'll see kind of how that, trickles down and, what that looks like. Cause you got to be at 105 by the fall, 85 scholarship players. So clearly still some roster management to be done here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not that we expected a mass exodus, cause we didn't. We talked about that multiple times, but there has been little to no movement in the portal so far going out. It's been Sam Franklin. That's it. I mean, as far as scholarship players, am I forgetting anyone else? I mean, you had Peter Shue and you had some walk-on. Devon
Mitchell, yeah.
But, I mean, you can't just add. You guys got to go. So, there's been
Josh
Isosa, that's a good one. So we'll see. You feel like there's still time. They had, spring and they had their X interviews. Who knows, right? I mean, what all goes into making a decision like that? But there's been some names that have been floating around that certainly I think fans know who I'm referring to. that we kind of thought were going to happen. And it's like, well, dang, it's April 21st now, so we'll see. Still like Tom, good point. There's probably going to be some exits still too. You would think you need to if you're going to continue to add. So we'll see. We got it all covered over on Sooners Illustrated, all the portal movement in and out. We got it for you over there. And there's more portal stuff going on as well. Obviously, that's just a couple of visits that I want to talk about on the show. There's other offers going out. They're still chasing wide receivers. Like Tom said, kickers still a priority that they know they need to add. So much more still going on. And we got it all for you. And we'll talk about it more at length with Colin, of course, on the Thursday show later this week. All right, Tom, I think we'll let you hop out. James, I can do some Diamond Sports. Good weekends for softball and baseball. So we'll wrap up the show with that.
Pretty
Tom, good sir. Until next time.
Yeah. And before we forget, shout out to the women's gymnastics team.
I meant to bring that up at the top of the show. Glad you said that. I meant to bring that up at the top of the show. 7th national title, all since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good.
Dynasty.
KJ Kindler, I mean,
Dynasty.
You can make the argument. Best coach on campus, man, right up there. 7 Natties since 2014. It's ridiculous. So,
and along with the team title, Jordan Bowers won the all around. So,
yeah,
big weekend for them. And I know the men finished third.
Third, I believe. Yeah. Also a really good program. SEC, just like it is in everything, is the best gymnastics conference. So best first year SEC for that program. Go win the Natty.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. Not bad at all. Glad you brought that up. All right, that's it for this portion. James, I'll do some Diamond Sports on the other side of the break right here. All right, we now shifting to the Diamond Sports portion of the program. James covers softball, I cover baseball. We'll start with softball as we typically do. Great weekend for Patty Gasso's team. Played a good Mississippi State squad and swept them. Mm-hmm. Weather adjusted, had the game on Friday, which was at Devon Park in Oklahoma City. Won that one 4-0. Had the doubleheader yesterday, a couple of competitive games, but won them both 6-5 and 9-6. James, you were dialed into these games. It seemed like it was, competitive. Obviously it was competitive yesterday. Fell behind in the second game, but they just, again, I know they've lost a couple series, but they still just have that. You feel like they're always going to win. And it's just kind of where they're at. What were the takeaways for you coming out of the weekend? Mississippi State, a good team, and Oklahoma did a nice job taking care of home field and picking up a big sweep going into obviously a massive weekend coming up with Texas that we can get into in just a second. But as far as the weekend that was with Mississippi State, what were the takeaways?
Yeah, I mean, Mississippi State is a very, very good program. I mean, they're coached by Samantha Ricketts, OU royalty, softball royalty, and a player that knows how to win. And they have one of the top hitters in the country. She's number 3 right now at Stocko, and she gave OU all she had. I mean, it was a pretty good outing for her, especially on Sunday, as you talked about. And offensively for OU, the big thing going in was where is it going to come from? Because they were coming off a week where it was pretty poor, not up to their standard. And Patty Gasso put Cassidy Pickering at the leadoff spot. And it just started up for OU. That's what it came down to. I asked Patty Gasso about that decision. She said, well, she has the hot bat right now, and she's the right person for this spot because everybody knows who she is and they have to face her first. They know about it, and it's going to add some pressure. And she started off her leadoff spot with a double in the first game and just kept on going from there, hitting a home run in game 3, I believe it was a home run on the first pitch of the that she saw. And so it was just a pretty good outing for OU. I mean, they had the 4-0 shutout in the opener with Sam Landry pitching. And then on Sunday, with all the antics, it was just pretty bad starts for OU in both games. You mentioned it, but they fell behind 4-0 in both games on Sunday. Audrey Lowry got to start in that first one on Sunday and got pulled pretty quickly. I think it was like 16 pitches because they already had a 4-0 lead. It was pretty bad, pretty bad outing for her. And OU found a way to fight their way back into that game. And, Gabby Garcia took home plate to win it. That was a big moment for them. Patty Gasso talked about it. It was resilience. That's what it comes down to. What she's learning about this team is they have resilience. As you mentioned many times, they're inevitable. I mean, that's what it came down to. And in game 3, it happened the same way. They were down 4-0, even with Sam Landry pitching. And, Gasso even thought about taking her out, but Sam Landry kind of gave her a little pushback. Let me handle this. I can do this. And she did. OU came back and won that game. Isabella Emmerling, it was a good sign for her to get that home run because she's been a bit of a slump as of late. So it's a good sign to see her get that home run. She also had a double early in that game. But just overall, it was a good weekend. You get the sweep over a team that hasn't been swept this year. A number 15 team in the country.
Sure.
It's a pretty positive sign overall. I mean, Isabella Smith came in, pitching. Good to see her again. She came in to help, the Audrey Lowry situation. She came in relief there and gave some really good innings. I mean, it's a really good innings there. So overall, a good weekend. I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to. It's a pretty good weekend for OU softball. Really good building weekend as they head into, a really, really, pivotal series against Texas.
Yeah, that's where I want to go next. Obviously, like I said, great weekend, good sweep. You sweep a top, whatever they were at the time, 15 team, at home. That's nicely done. And now here you go. I mean, Texas comes in already the final home series of the regular season. Kind of crazy. We're at that point in the year. Obviously, they'll be at home in the tournament. So not the final home games, but the final home series of the regular season with Texas coming in. Top 5 matchup. Obviously, these programs, it's Oklahoma and Texas, first off, but then they've had a lot of contention. They've met in the national title series, the WCWS finals a couple of times now. I mean, this is if you're just a casual softball fan, not even OU or Texas, like these are one of the series that you circle. I mean, it's two programs that have lived in OKC and, like I said, have played for the national title a couple of times. Some thoughts from you going into what is going to be obviously a heavyweight fight this weekend in Norman at Love's Field. I imagine it'll be mega packed as far as crowds go. We'll see. Hopefully weather, it's been a bit of a hit or miss with rain and stuff like that. Hopefully, it can stay relatively close to the normal schedule. But some thoughts from you going into this weekend. I mean, a huge, huge series, obviously, with Oklahoma and Texas meeting up, top 5 matchup in Norman.
Listen, there are no elite teams this year in softball where they're just not going to get beat. Like, and we've seen that the last couple of years with Oklahoma, but there are a bunch of really, really good teams and a bunch of great teams. The great teams in this list are, Texas A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, and Florida. Those are like the top 4 as of right now that you really, really want to pay attention to in terms of softball and who could win it all. And so this is why it's such a big meeting. Texas got OU in their home series last year. And so OU wants to return the favor here, even though they beat them in the, the Big 12 and the national championship. You want to protect your home field. And I think that's what it's going to be in this one. Texas brings a lot back while OU graduated a lot. And so that's going to be one of those big factors you have to play in as well. How are they going to handle, Tegan Cavana, the great player from Texas that is just, one of those players you really have to think is going to be a, one of those softball royalty type of players down the line. She's that good. And so OU has to figure that out. So it's going to be really fun to see. How does Cassidy Pickering, how does Ella Parker, how do they come up and really show how good they are in this series? That's something that's going to be, really watched. And we talked about it a lot, but OU's pitching situation. I mean, as of right now, it looks like Sam Landry is really the consistent arm for OU, and they only have that one consistent arm right now. And so that was a worrisome thing that they tried to figure out throughout the season. But we're down to it now. We're 2 SEC series left. And it just looks like she's the only one that you can really, really count on in terms of a really big game like this. And so it's going to be interesting to see, Josh. I'm not sure entirely how I would pick it. OU is at home, so I think that always swings in their favor, but it's going to be a tough matchup. It's going to be tough.
It's going to be exciting. I'm looking forward to it. All 3 games nationally televised, which you never see. I mean, a game in a series, even sometimes 2, but all 3, ESPNU on Friday, and ESPN2 on Saturday and Sunday, just goes to show you, I mean, what this series is. This is, I mean, the argument can absolutely be made. This is the single regular season series in the sport this year that you if you're a fan, you want to watch. I mean, it's going to be big time. So be a fun series. I look forward to watching it. Oklahoma and Texas this weekend, top 5 matchup. Again, all 3 are nationally televised. I imagine the crowds will be great, as they always are, but especially for a series like this, it's going to be standing room only, I'm assuming, at Love's Field. So should be awesome. We'll have all the coverage, and crazy, just 2 weekends left, and then it's SEC tournament and then the big tournament after that. Great time of year. And it's just crazy that we're here. You look up, it's April 21st. It's about that time.
Yeah, that's exactly what Patty Gasso said. He was like, man, it's only 2 weekends left. And it was like, I have more stuff I wanted to work on. So it's crazy. But the reason I mentioned there was no elite teams this year is I wouldn't be surprised if this series goes either way, for each team. That's what I mean by that. Like, there's no okay, this team should win and they should win all their games. That's not where it is right now. So it's just going to be fun to see because it can go either way. And I think that's why you're seeing ESPN all over this. It's like, who knows what's going to happen, So it's a fun place to be.
Texas A&M takes over at number 1 and they win that series in Missouri, but then they got run ruled in the last. I remember I saw this guy. It's like, what the heck? Number 1 doesn't get run ruled ever. It's like you said, it's kind of a topsy-turvy year. You kind of always feel like you have to favor OU until proven otherwise, but we'll see what happens this weekend. Big time series. If you go with 2 this weekend, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously, you got to go to Florida next week. That's another huge one that we'll talk about next week on the show. But fun way to end the year. It's kind of only big weekends the rest of the way for OU softball. Shifting over to baseball, great week. Obviously, they took advantage of a bit of a lighter part in their schedule where they just bludgeoned throughout the week. Oklahoma State on Tuesday night in Stillwater. I was there. Run ruled the Pokes at O'Brate. O'Brate Stadium has been a little bit of a house of horrors for Oklahoma since it's been built. They've had some nice moments, but it's been largely kind of tough sledding there, and they just smacked them. 5 runs in the first, never looked back. Pitching was great. They run rule Oklahoma State on Tuesday, and then they go to Missouri, and we talked about it last week, and I've said it a couple times. There's only one team in the SEC that I would say is bad, and it's Missouri, and Oklahoma made them look like it. I mean, they run ruled them 3 times, swept them. Oklahoma hasn't played a full 9 in over a week. It's crazy. They keep run ruling games. It's nuts. They completely destroyed Missouri. I mean, completely destroyed. The Tigers came in, and you knew their pitching was their weakness. Their team ERA was very high going into the weekend, and Oklahoma scored 17, 17, and then 11 or 12. I'm blanking on the last game. Just insane. Bombs everywhere. Easton Carmichael had a huge weekend. Jackson Willits had a huge weekend. A big development is Drew Dickerson, true freshman. He's a Missouri kid, so he's back in his home state. Had a massive weekend. He was actually named the SEC Freshman of the Week while we were recording the show. He was awesome. If he can kind of come along and be like an extra bat, that would be huge. It was a great weekend and kind of amazing, too. The starting rotation, Kyson Witherspoon probably had the worst start, and he still had a good start, but Malachi Witherspoon and Cade Crossan were both great, and that's a good thing if you're OU. If Kyson Witherspoon if he's going to have the worst start of the weekend, more often than not, that's going to mean a good thing because he's still going to be good. His worst is still a lot of guys' best, and the fact that Malachi and Cade had starts that they did, it's encouraging. Again, Missouri's not very good. They're quite bad, actually. They're 0-18 in SEC play now. But OU went in there and just took care of business. I mean, just destroyed a bad team, did what you're supposed to do, and just completely demolished them. So good vibes right now. They're up to 14 in the D1 baseball rankings. At last projection, D1 Baseball had them just on the outside looking in of hosting. Baseball America actually did have them hosting. So it kind of just goes to show you where they're at. They're right on that bubble right now. Big week ahead. Oral Roberts on Tuesday at home in midweek, but then they go to Georgia, who's a top 10 team on the road. That's a big resume opportunity this weekend in Athens. So we'll see. But good vibes. It's kind of crazy to think, a couple weeks ago, we were talking about how the offense was just
I was going to say that.
Stuck in the mud, and they score 50-plus runs over the weekend in Columbia. You're feeling a lot better about the offense right now. So good vibes right now for OU baseball, and we'll see. They got a few weekends left here, but good vibes after what was a great week, just destroying Oklahoma State and Missouri.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not a lot to take away from beating a team like Missouri, but I mean, just being able to handle the business that you're supposed to be able to handle is a sign of a good team. You don't have any hiccups there, and you just take over. So that's a really, really good sign for them. So I mean, I'm like what I'm hearing. I mean, that's
I went in. Again, Missouri was 0-15 going into the weekend, so it's like they've only been swept, obviously, right? And so, but it's always hard to expect a sweep on the road. But I mean, these games were not competitive. I mean, Friday, the first game on Thursday, actually not Friday, Thursday was, I think, 3-3 into the 5th. So it was a competitive game, and it was kind of like, was Missouri going to maybe flirting with getting their first win? Obviously, Oklahoma ended up run ruling it and just blowing it open late. And, they had a doubleheader on Friday. So they've had a couple of days off here because of the weird scheduling with weather up there. So good vibes, though. You're in a good spot. You're back home tomorrow before another big road weekend. And opportunities abound. You got Ole Miss at home. You go to Lexington, Texas at home to close the regular season. So it's a tough schedule the rest of the way. But if you can win a couple of these series, you're going to be in good shape to host, which is obviously the goal right now. Get to that host line and set yourself up to try and go on a little bit of a run. when we get to the tournament. So good spot they're in right now. Took care of business, and back home tomorrow against ORU. I'll be in the building for that one.
It's a tough schedule, but it seems like they've had this tough schedule throughout the entire way, and they're handling business. You know what I mean? Like they're handling their business. So I think it's going really well for them. Obviously, outside of that, 5-game stretch, wasn't it 5 games or they had
a little dry spell? It's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's going to happen a bit. They got swept by LSU and lost to DBU. Had a little 4-game skid in there, but they've seemed to have pulled themselves out of it. Vanderbilt, we talked about last week, they took 2 or 3 from Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt turned right around and swept Georgia, who was number 5, I think. So Vanderbilt's good. That was a good series for them. We talked about that last week. So Georgia will be licking their wounds a little bit with OU coming in there this weekend. They're still number 10 in D1 baseball rankings. So Georgia's still really good. That's a team that's probably going to host. So big opportunity this weekend. If you can go get 2 in Athens, you're feeling great. You would be in the top 10 on Monday, no doubt in my mind, if you go get 2 this weekend. So big opportunity for Oklahoma.
Yeah,
I think that's it.
Well, let me
sports coverage to come. Go ahead.
Let me put this in here just so everybody's not upset. When I spoke about great softball teams, I want to throw in Tennessee as well. They have beaten OU and beaten Texas. Let's put that in there. They are a great team, especially with their pitcher, Caroline Pickens. Just throw it in there.
The SEC tournament in both softball and baseball this year, and every year, but this year especially with OU and Texas being in there, just carnage. I mean, must-watch TV on both sports. Those conference tournaments are going to be a blast. I mean, arguably, if you go win the SEC tournament and you win in either sport, softball or baseball, that is like almost literally just as impressive as winning in Oklahoma City or winning in Omaha. Like, that's how hard it's going to be. That's the kind of field you're going to have to navigate. It's going to be awesome. Great time. I love the postseason. Extremely underrated time of year is May and into June with the postseason in softball and baseball. Great time of year. It's so fun. They're stacked. They don't really overlap too much. You kind of get to watch both tournaments. It's great. I love it. It's coming up on a really fun time of year for sure in the spring. I think that's it for now. Again, be sure to subscribe. Oklahoma.247sports.com, Students Illustrated. Tons of portal content there and more to come. Still coming out of spring ball as well. And lots of Diamond sports coverage, obviously, as well. We're getting into the fun part of the year, like I was just talking about. So be sure to subscribe. Come hang out with us over Oklahoma.247sports.com. Game threads for all the Diamond sports games. Hang out, congregate. We all watch the games together. It's a good time. So we're getting to the nitty-gritty. It'll be the summer and getting ready for next season on the football side before you know it. So great time to hop aboard at Sooners Illustrated. Lots of portal content, all that other good stuff.
The game threads are exciting, man. A lot of people have some takes, good takes. A lot of bad takes. Oh, yeah. But it's exciting and it's fun. The
takes are flying. No doubt about that. No doubt about that. I think that's it for now. Be back with Colin on Thursday. Oh, great. You don't want to miss you don't want to miss any show ever, but especially these portal shows with Colin. He's all over it. So lots of good stuff coming on Thursday with him. Be sure to tune in Thursday, every Monday, Thursday, 3:00. We'll be back on for then. That's it for now. For Tom Green earlier, James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Callaway signing off. We'll see you next time right back here on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.